Well, hello to everyone out there in the football world. We are the Head Couch Analysts, and I am your host, Sanders. And as normal, I'm joined by Head Couch Pardue. And you know what? Luckily, there are Head Couch Analysts in the world out there like us. How you doing, man?
Oh, hey, man, I'm doing pretty good. We're having a great week. Got Friday off, so it's the wife and or fiance's birthday, so got the day off. She's getting off early, and then we're gonna go do whatever she wants to do. We're chilling out. It's the weekend, 3-day weekend for me. It's been a great free agency period so far. Lots of news. It's been good for the Cardinals. Steve Keim's doing his thing. So, you know what? We're doing pretty good right now.
Yeah, you liked that Head Couch Analyst comment, didn't you?
Hey, that was good.
I'm
not gonna name names, but to our listeners, you know.
That's a deep cut for probably like the 10 people who are gonna get it. And if you really want to find out, you can like scroll through our Twitters and maybe you'll find it. But anyway, you know what, man? You know, haters gonna hate, and I don't even think they're haters. I think they just got annoyed by people.
Me. Because I'll admit to like. I'll get into it a little bit. So, a lot of Arizona local fans will know the names Johnny Venerable and Blake Allen Murphy. They cover the Arizona Cardinals. They do the Revenge of the Birds podcast, and I'll admit they do a good job. And I'm sure they're good guys.
Yeah, I really like Blake. Man. I do.
No, Blake is good, but in my opinion. I think there's times where they can be just a little bit whiny, and it contributes to the toxicity and whininess of this fan base. Because we're getting really spoiled right now. What the Arizona Cardinals are doing as a franchise right now is something they've never done, and I think a lot of people are taking it for granted.
Yeah, I was just talking with my one of my coaches that I coach with. He's a Washington fan. Ben is a Patriots fan. He's from Boston. He moved from Boston here 2 years ago. I'm a Ravens fan, and then Keith is a Cardinals fan, right? So we were all kind of like all four of us. When we are not like discussing basketball, we're talking about football. All four of us love NFL football. That's like our favorite sport to watch. It's funny how we coach basketball, but we all agree NFL is the most fun to watch. We still watch NBA and stuff like that, but like NFL is our big priority. And we were talking about how crazy it is to see like local headlines always talking about the Cardinals now, and how like this hasn't happened in like years. And even like back when
since 2015,
even back when they were playoff contenders, there weren't like free agents wanting to come to Arizona, right? Whether it was because of Bruce Arians' mean attitude, or Carson Palmer was just a barely top 12 quarterback, like probably anywhere between 10 to 12. Now, there was a year where he was like an MVP candidate, right? But for the most part, when you think of the name Carson Palmer back then, you thought anywhere between a top 10 to top 12, which is a playoff level quarterback, right? Top 10. If you're a top 12 quarterback, you're a playoff level quarterback. So, but Carson Palmer wasn't like the guy who made you want to go. But now that you have a guy named Kyler Murray, and suddenly DeAndre Hopkins is there, and then suddenly J.J. Watt is there, and now you have three big names, two veteran leaders. Well, I wouldn't say two veteran leaders. One veteran leader in J.J. Watt, one phenomenal elite talent in DeAndre Hopkins, and then a rising star in Kyler Murray. Suddenly Arizona becomes a hot destination.
And then when you attribute, the young coach that's a player's coach, that players are now like today's, players in the NFL that's the kind of coach they want to play for, is what I'm trying to get to. But and then you contribute the weather that these players are in the majority of the year. It's less wear and tear on their body. And there is some, if there's a trend with Keim's move so far, and it's getting, over 30 players that have all been captains at some point in their career on 2-year contracts for a Super Bowl window. That's all the moves. Every single one of those players, besides the Marcus Golden extension, but I could see Marcus Golden taking Patrick Peterson's captain patch this year. He's looking for captains and veterans that are hooking on this Super Bowl Kyler Murray train They're hooking their wagon to Kyler Murray because they think that's their last chance at a Super Bowl. That's what this offseason looks to me so far. But we're not here to talk about the Cardinals today. What are we getting into today, Sanders?
I kind of want to get into the AFC North because the Steelers keep losing people. Because breaking news, their starting corner Steven Nelson was granted permission to seek out a trade, and he was one of the top graded quarterbacks in the last 2 years. They just keep losing defensive players, man. I don't know what's happening. But we're not here to talk about the Steelers, even though there's some news going on about them. Let's talk about a division that's actually had quite a bit of news around it. I would say the last month and a half. This division has created some noise, whether through trades, a bullish head coach, or signing, a future Hall of Fame corner, or maybe just making some general managing moves that people are questioning in Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, and Chicago. And what's funny is the questionable general management can be for two of these teams, both Green Bay and Chicago. And I'm actually going to have Pardue start out with both of these because he actually has a lot to say about the general management of both these teams and why he thinks. From what I was getting from you before when we were doing our pre-show rundown, mistakes made by the team. I don't know. What do you got?
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the Packers at first. Let's look at this from Aaron Rodgers' perspective. So last year, that's how long I think the mismanagement with the Packers front office has been going on for about 2 years now. So last offseason and so far this offseason. So I think Matt LaFleur is a great coach. Obviously, you have Aaron Rodgers. They have a really good roster. And no matter what, they're going to be competitive. With that being said, they aren't making the key. They're a team that's set to compete for a Super Bowl, but they aren't making the moves, the one or two big moves that are taking their team and roster over the top. What I mean by that is last year, when in the first round you draft Aaron Rodgers' replacement, and it turns out, reportedly, he's really not good at all. And then Aaron Rodgers goes out, has an MVP season. Now you're looking, okay, he's still going to be here 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You made a mistake there. And especially on top, when you throw on top of that, Aaron Rodgers has been asking for a number 2 receiver during this time period, and you still haven't gotten him one, is an indictment on the front office of the Green Bay Packers. Now, furthermore, coming into this offseason now, don't get me wrong. I think Aaron Jones is an incredible running back. I think he is honestly a top 5 running back in the NFL. I think he's that good. He got paid, but he did not get paid top money. He took a hometown discount to stay in Green Bay. So I think it was really cool of Aaron Jones to do that, and I think it helps their offense. I think Aaron Jones is really, really key in that offense. With that being said, you could have let him go and then gotten another receiver. You could have brought him back and still gotten another receiver. In my opinion, yes, the cap space exists, but any team can go get any player they want. It's just going to depend on what you're willing to give up, whether it's draft picks, other players that are currently on your roster, because you've got to make space. But you can get any player you want. That's why people say cap space doesn't exist. That's why I say cap space doesn't exist. So Packers have been asking, Rodgers has been asking for a number 2 receiver for years now. Still haven't given it to him, and then they just extend this running back. Then they just let their all-pro number 1 center in the NFL right now, Corey Linsley, walk. And now I get it, you kind of couldn't afford that contract at that point, but that's not helping this team. They're not making the big splash move to put them over the top. And they're there. This team's ready to win a Super Bowl, but they're just not making the move. And maybe they draft a wide receiver in the first round this year, but you're not going to get one of the top guys unless you trade up. I mean, maybe that's their plan. But I don't know. I just feel like the way the Packers are building their team and trying to win the Super Bowl is just kind of weird, and I just don't think they're going to quite get there with the class of the NFC unless they make these big splash moves. That's my opinion on the Packers. What do you think?
My biggest issue with Green Bay is basically what you said, the lack of getting a wide receiver too. Also, as for your cap space comment thing, because I've been doing a lot of research on it, and I'm going to put out this video. Unfortunately, it's going to come out later than I want it to. But I think I'm gonna put it out right before the draft because there's a section in the video I'm gonna cover where I talk about how teams prepare cap space for the draft. You have to have at minimum, at least from what I've been seeing, at minimum you need at least $8 million going into the draft in cap space. The $8 million is reserved for however many rookies you draft, right? It's also reserved for post June 6th, I believe, is like when like whatever weird things happen with contracts and like cap hits become less or whatever.
June 1st. Is
it June 1st this year? I know last year was June 6th.
Like the Cardinals have already identified their June 1st cuts.
Yeah, right. And then that's when like teams still like save cap space to sign those players, right? Because there's still some quality like gyms that are sometimes cut from that spot. And then you have to have, I believe it's 2.5 to 3.5 million in cap space minimum. I mean, there's no like thing saying you have to have that, but the general consensus is you need 2.5 to 3.5 million minimum to sign players in case injuries happen in the during the season. So you have to manage your cap in such a way to where like you still have money left over for the draft, money left over for second wave of free agency in summer if you so choose to partake in that. And then you also have to have enough money to where, let's just say, a surprise player gets let go during the season, or you get an injury, right, and you need to trade for a player or just sign a player. You have to have the money to still sign them. So it's very interesting. Like a lot of the research I've done on cap the last 2 weeks has really opened my eyes to how these things work. And you're not wrong. You can get any player you want, but it comes at the sacrifice that, like, let's just say. You know, the cap space is 185. So I'm going to go on the small thing. The cap space is 185 million, right? And let's say I have 15 million left and I've spent 170. I can no longer go get someone like, let's just, I'm a Ravens fan. Let's just say I only have like 14 or 15 million in cap space. I can't really go get Kenny Golladay or Juju if they want the money they want. Right? Like if they're playing just to get a contract and not to win, we can't pay you. Right? Our enticing offer is we have a great defense, Lamar Jackson, and we want to win a Super Bowl. Do you want to join us? Right? In that effort. And in doing so, we can't give you your $14 to $15 million contract a year. We can only give you 10 to 12. Because that's the cap hit we can take. If we were to opt into that 15 million a year, right? Now the cap hit's not going to be 15 million, it'd probably be like 10 to 12. Maybe 8 to 9, depending on how the contract is structured. But that cap hit would take 8 to 9 million off that 15 million. Suddenly we have 6 million going into the draft, which is bad. We can't have 6 million going into the draft because that means we only technically have 3 million to spend on the draft, which is terrible because you can't have just 3 million to spend on the draft because your first round player is going to take up 1 point something of that alone, right? And so you overspend there, you overspend in the draft, and then suddenly you have no money going into the season, and you can't make up for injuries or whatever it may be, right? So I can go get those players I want, but I might be screwing myself in the future, which is why if I was the Ravens and I signed a player like Kenny Golladay or Juju with 15 million in cap space, I need to let go of a player, or I need to let someone other big name go. And it turns out maybe I don't want that big name to go. It could be a name like, who's someone we would not want to let go that has a decent cap hit? Probably Calais Campbell. Or,
who was the tackle you just signed up big that tore his ACL? Or whatever?
We didn't sign a tackle who tore his ACL. We re-signed, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. He was with us for 1 year. Derek Wolfe. We just re-signed Derek Wolfe.
What's his name though? Like Ronnie Staley. Who's your tackle?
Okay. Oh, you're talking about our left and right tackles? Oh, Ronnie Stanley.
Yes.
Yeah, we made him like the second highest paid left tackle in the NFL. What about him?
You could trade him for something.
Yeah, but
if you really wanted a receiver.
But I mean, we already lost Marshall Yanda. Why would we do that to ourselves, right?
Right.
Especially when our running game is the focus. So that's the point. That's my point, right? Yeah, we get a wide receiver, but what do we lose in the process, right? So that's what cap does, is it forces you to be able to construct a roster within a limited space. That's what cap does, right? And when people say the cap doesn't exist, it's like, no, it does. It just forces you to do things that maybe you don't want to do, right? And I will say the Saints have masterfully done that the last few years. At some point, the teller's going to come ringing, but for now, like, the Saints have mastered that. And they really haven't lost anyone outside of, like, Malcolm Jenkins, who they signed for on a 2-year deal anyway when they signed him last year. So, I mean, the Saints aren't hurting as much as, like, it seems, but they certainly won't. The sacrifice that the Saints gave up the last 2 years is they can't do any big free agency signings going forward right now. Right? They can't go out and get that big-time player. They had to get rid of Malcolm Jenkins and Emmanuel Sanders, which, to be honest, isn't the worst loss in the world. You're still keeping Kamara. As of right now, you still have Michael Thomas on the books. You just got Jameis Winston, right, which I think was the smart thing to do. I really like Jameis Winston there, and so their punishment is they can't improve their team. That's their punishment. They can't improve. They kind of stay status quo, which, for better or worse, might be fine, because I think the Saints have a fantastic roster still, even with Malcolm Jenkins and Emmanuel Sanders leaving. To your original question, like, what do I think of, like, the Packers management? Because I wanted to make that cap space comment. Outside of wide receiver, I've loved how, like, the Packers have handled their general management for the last couple years. The signing of Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith has paid off immensely. They traded for they signed Amos from the Bears, which was fantastic. I don't know how the Bears let them go to a division rival like that. Like, Packers-Bears is the oldest rivalry in the NFL. It's the most storied one. It has the most matches between it. It's still one of the most exciting matches to like. Even though I know the Packers are going to win, I always get excited for a Packers-Bears matchup. I don't know if it's because I'm a sucker for NFL stories or NFL history, but I'm always like, I'm going to watch this Packers-Bears matchup on Sunday night or on Thursday night or Monday. It's always on a primetime game, right? Unfortunately. I always get excited for Packers-Bears. And even that, the last...
I don't get excited for anything Bears.
Even the last Bears game was pretty exciting. The one in November where Trubisky actually played well, like, that was a fun game. And then the Packers pulled away in the last 8 minutes, as expected, and they beat them by, like, I don't even remember how much. I remember it being, like, super close until, like, the very end. I'm not 25-41. That's what it was. At one point, this game was. -5. This game was 25-26 at one point. That's how exciting it was. And then they just, pulled away. Oh well. Shit happens. As for, I mean, if you want me to comment on, like, the whole drafting A.J. Dillon and, Jordan Love thing, I don't know why they drafted Jordan Love in the first place. My biggest problem...
No use drafting A.J. Dillon and then in the second round, and then instead of a receiver, because you could have gotten a good receiver there too, instead you draft A.J. Dillon and then pay Aaron Jones. It just doesn't make sense.
My biggest problem is not that... It is not that they drafted a quarterback. My problem was that they drafted Jordan Love. I didn't understand that. And I still don't get it. I just didn't fall in love with Jordan Love from his college tape. So they drafted, like, a project quarterback in round 1. They traded up to do it when they could have traded up to get Patrick Queen, which I feel like would have helped their defense way more. It just didn't feel like they were in win now mode, right? And A.J. Dillon actually ended up being a successful pick. I really liked what I saw in the last few weeks of A.J. Dillon. They were really working him those last few weeks, and he was doing well. So I like that. Clearly, they don't like Jamal Williams anymore. But I agree with you on the wide receiver part. But that's my only complaint. I don't think anything else is bad about what they've done, because they've done an excellent job on defense. I think they've done a good job in helping like the offense in terms of like linemen and running backs, but they just refuse to look at the wide receiver position, and I don't know why. Like, I like Lazard and I like Scantling, but I don't love either of them.
The reason why they aren't is because they already have so much money tied up with Devontae Adams, so they're trying to get away with cheaper solutions. But I think that's what's keeping that team from getting to the next level, is not having a guy from Devontae Adams, because putting a guy across from Devontae Adams is only going to make him that much better.
Yeah, I think it's keeping him away from a Super Bowl, because they've been to the NFC Championship twice now, and they've gotten beat both times. I guess they didn't get smothered this last time, but they got their ass kicked by San Francisco. And then they kind of not choked it away. They had, 3 interceptions they didn't score off of, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
Like, a wide receiver 2 changes that, doesn't it? Someone better than Lazard and Scantling at least gives them a touchdown, right? At least one touchdown out of those 3 interceptions. Am I wrong? I feel like I'm not wrong.
Say so. No.
Like, that Bucs defense is good, but I feel like I'm not wrong. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say on Green Bay. I think their biggest issues are they need probably some corner depth. They need a lineman now that their center's gone, and they need a wide receiver too. That's probably what we're going to be looking at coming into the rest of free agency and the draft. Losing Corey Linsley hurts big time.
Mm-hmm. Losing the best center, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, always hurts. But I think that's enough on the Packers. We spent a lot of time on the Packers. Let's move on to the Bears. So with the Bears right now, it seems like to me that they put all their chips in one basket, and that basket was Russell Wilson. The report was they were trying to trade 3 first-round picks, I think, in a third, and then 2 players, which turned out to be Akeem Hicks and Kyle Fuller, for Russell Wilson. Now, if I'm Seattle, I'll take that 100%, and I'm not even going to lie. And I think it's because their Super Bowl window is over, even with Russell Wilson, but we'll get into that when we talk about the NFC West. With that being said, I think the Bears didn't have that trade go through, because that's a good offer, honestly. If you're the Bears, you're giving up a lot, but I think the Bears as an organization have never in their history had a franchise quarterback, a true franchise great quarterback. You would have been trading away a lot, but it would have been for something you've never, ever had, and something that literally is the only piece keeping you from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender, in my opinion, because the Bears have a pretty good team built.
They have a pretty good roster, man. They really do.
They need it. They need to fix that offensive line, because Russell Wilson would still be running for his life, but he'll do a much better job than Trubisky or Nick Foles. If they fix up that offensive line, they got 2 good running backs in Tariq Cohen and Montgomery. If they traded for Russell Wilson, Allen would be just fine staying on that franchise tag for $18 million. Darnell Mooney's a really good receiver, and then that defense is stacked. Even without Akeem Hicks and Kyle Fuller, you'll be fine. That defense will be fine. You'll be a Super Bowl contender if they pull that off. Now, it didn't happen, so it doesn't matter. So they got Andy Dalton. And while do you want to know what Andy Dalton is to me? He is, we couldn't get Russell Wilson. Let's get our actual let's get a second version of our actual franchise's best quarterback of all time in Jay Cutler. So Andy Dalton did play well with the Cowboys last year, and I do think Andy Dalton is an upgrade at quarterback compared to Trubisky and Nick Foles. So I do think they upgraded. I feel like they got him on a fairly decent deal.
$10 million.
I think it was nice. $10 million. If Allen Robinson does end up staying, you still got a great wide receiver 1. You got a good running game. Hopefully they build up an offensive line. And then you still kept Akeem Hicks, and now Fuller was cut, which is something else I want to get into. What the fuck? I know his PFF grade was like the 55th ranked defensive back last year or something like that, but sometimes, man, like PFF is a tool, but it is not, the Bible. And in this case, it is definitely not the Bible. He's an all-pro defensive back, and they just released him. Why? They're trying to trade Akeem Hicks. Trust me, the cornerback market in terms of free agency isn't very good. And there's cornerback-needy teams. Someone will trade for Kyle Fuller. So it just didn't make sense to me. And I get it. It was from a cap space perspective. They saved a lot of money on the cap. I think it was something reportedly like $11 million on the cap. So that's a big deal. But I don't think it helps your team. What moves are you going to do to supplement that, or is that just the front office trying to save money? So that's what doesn't make sense to me. So Kyle Fuller is a really, really good defensive back who's out in the open market right now, and he's probably going to get a pretty good contract. He's probably going to get like a 2-year contract that's mostly almost fully guaranteed, I can imagine. But other than that, like the Bears have a really good roster built up. They upgraded at quarterback. They have decent weapons. We'll see what happens with the Allen Robinson deal. And I mean, hey, if they trade Allen Robinson away, that's another $18 million saved. But where are you going to supplement that money? Because free agents are running out, and you're not paying rookies big money. So unless you're trying to pull off a big trade for something, I guess we'll find out. But that's kind of my take on the Bears, that they just don't really seem to have – their vision was Russell Wilson, and now it didn't happen, so they're giving up. That's what I feel like the Bears just did. Now, I think they're still going to be competitive because they have a great defense. But if they trade away Hakeem Hicks, then that just is telling me that they're not trying. So I don't know what your thoughts on the Bears. What do you think?
I heard every word you said. I promise I was listening, but I'm just in utter pain right now from the news that came out 2 minutes ago.
What happened?
The Ravens offered Juju Smith the most money on the market, and he chose to take a hometown discount to stay in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
My soul hurts,
wow,
bro. The receiver I wanted. He offered them the most.
Wow.
Oh, okay, so here's what was offered to him. So he took a 1-year, $8 million contract with the Steelers. 1 year.
Really? That's right? It?
I think it's because it's Big Ben's last year. I think that's it. I think he's just going on the Big Ben thing. That's it. Maybe he feels like he owes Big Ben, and that's it, right? Kansas City also offered him $8 million, but with $3 million in incentives. Baltimore offered him $9 million and $4 million in incentives. We offered him the most
money. Chiefs, man. How'd you not go to the Chiefs?
Oh, we offered him the most money, and he said no. I'm in so much pain. I'm sorry, dude. Like, I heard every word he said about the Bears, but I'm reading this, and this was the receiver I wanted, and I'm in so much pain knowing we offered him the most, and he still said no.
I mean, I'm going to say respect. I'm going to say respect to Juju there, though, because I was one of the guys fully saying, hey, he's going to go to New York because he wants to build a brand, and he's all about himself. So that's pretty cool of him to do that. I'm actually really shocked, and that's pretty. I'm actually pretty cool with that. And I mean, hey, $8 million, man. I wish the Cardinals could have gotten for that on a 1-year deal. Damn.
Big time pain. Okay. Anyways, so as for the Bears, you're right. There's a lot of weird things going on, as you were saying. Like, you know, they signed Andy Dalton, like you were saying. They have some good moves. Maybe Allen Robinson does stick around. For $18 million, it seems pricey, which, by the way, it was confirmed that Kenny Golladay is looking for $18.5 million a year. Yeah.
I mean, you're off on him. I know you don't like him because of the injury history, but he's a top 5 receiver when he's healthy. So
I agree with that, but I don't know if it's like you've said this on the show. I think I've only ever said it once on the show. You say it a lot. Your best ability is availability, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can't be available, why am I paying you $18.5 million a year?
Right. So, right. And no, I agree. It's just that's market value, and I think players are trying to get as much money as they can before the end of their career. So I don't blame them trying to get his bag.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're all out here to try and get our money so we can retire, right? Mm-hmm. That is the goal of life. But, if Allen Robinson sticks around, I mean, I like Andy Dalton. I just don't know. It doesn't kind of like I was telling you before the show, there's moves that move the needle for me for teams, worse or better, and then there's moves that don't move the needle. I'm like, okay, it's just status quo for this team. Like, for example, and we'll get to this when we talk about the AFC West, the Chargers signing Corey Linsley doesn't move the needle for me. It just stays where it's at. It doesn't move it up. It doesn't move it down. It's a great signing for a great player, but I don't think that player actually moves your needle all that much other than it helps Justin Herbert's development, right? And for Chicago, it's an upgrade at quarterback, but that doesn't move the needle for me because it's not that big of an upgrade, and you're still playing, like, at this point, I feel like Andy Dalton is comparable to Jared Goff, who's a divisional opponent, right? Like, they're both just average quarterbacks at this point in their careers, Jared Goff being significantly younger, but they're both just average quarterback in these careers. I don't see them elevating their players, and I'm not sure where Andy Dalton comes in with Matt Nagy's type of scheming. Maybe he treats Andy Dalton like Matt Nagy did Alex Smith, right? Because Matt Nagy did some great work with Alex Smith in Kansas City, so that it's possible that works that way. But then you decide that you're going to get rid of Kylo Furner and Akeem Hicks, which obviously they were already planning on doing because that's what they wanted to give up to Seattle, and then they let him go anyway. So clearly their plan was to never be with him in the first place. And to address your question, it's 100% a cap thing. I don't think they could afford them. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of veterans that are getting cut, big-name veterans that are getting cut because teams can't afford them. It's also, it might be a blessing in disguise for a lot of teams where maybe it's time to let go of your aging veterans and get youthful anyway, because some teams hold on to their aging veterans when they shouldn't. If you know what I'm talking about. For example, I feel like Pittsburgh's doing that with Big Ben. Of course, they can't really get another quarterback anyway, but I have a huge problem with them re-signing Big Ben. I didn't understand it. I don't get it. We can talk about that more later on. I have a lot to say on the Steelers. I have a lot of opinions on them. Especially because I was so high on them last year, and then going into 2021, I'm not high. But the Bears are like they're experiencing the same thing. You know, they're getting rid of their aging veterans. They're trying to move on. They're trying to get younger, and they're trying to maintain this COVID cap space, which I guess is what we can call it, because that's where the small cap space came from. And you're right; it doesn't necessarily benefit the Bears in any way, and it doesn't give them a direction. Like, keeping Allen Robinson and signing Andy Dalton with Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery, like, where does this go? Is this like an offense where you use the 1-2 punching bag with David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen and then have Andy Dalton throw it to Allen Robinson? Okay, that's fine, but what's your other receiving options? You know, what are your plans for this offense going forward? Where does Andy Dalton become the answer? Like, what was going on in their head where they said, okay, Andy Dalton is the guy, right? And he's going to throw to the likes of, like, Javon Williams and Anthony Miller. Where does any of this come in? You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like the Bears, I feel like they're going to go 8-8 or 9-7 again. This is a great roster. But they didn't do anything to move the needle up or downwards for me. In fact, it might be slightly downwards with the loss of Kylo Fuller. Hakeem Hicks might not be, like, extremely significant, or maybe he will be. But at the end of the day, you got to play in a division where you got to beat the Vikings and the Packers, and this doesn't do it. I think that's where I finally rested, is your goal is to beat the Packers. And the Vikings. The Vikings are pretty good too. And if you can't do either of those things, you're left to be third or fourth in your division and not making the playoffs.
Well, that's all I got on the Bears.
Is there like a simple solution for the Bears? Like, is there anything they could do in the next in the draft that would make you say, all right, this is a better direction? We see what they're doing.
Trade up and draft Trevor Lawrence. but they're not going to do that.
No. I'm just saying. Let's stick with Andy Dalton as the quarterback, right? They're only picking with number 21, 22, I think is their pick. I'm going to double check that, but you're drafting, in the low 20s is where they're going to draft. Yeah, it's going to be 20. They're going to pick 20. And they also got 2 compensatory draft picks as well, so I guess that's nice. I'm trying to think of like what they could do in the draft that would make me say, okay, this looks a bit better than it did 2 months ago when you signed Andy Dalton. Maybe they get some sort of wide receiver at number 20. Because wide receivers are definitely
you're not getting it. You're not getting any of the top 4 wide receivers at number 20, so no. There's 4 difference maker wide receivers immediately in this draft, in my opinion, that will be Justin Jefferson type contributions, but you're not getting them at 20.
I mean, Jefferson made it all the way to 21, didn't he?
It's because while the wide receiver class this year is good, there's a lot less really great wide receivers. There was just a ton of great wide receivers last year.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, CD, Justin Jefferson, etc. If the Bears come out in the draft and they end up signing, and they end up getting a good corner and a good wide receiver, and of course, rookies are rookies, you can't expect them to be elite immediately, but if they can get like a solid corner and like a solid wide receiver in the draft, then maybe I can look at their moves and say, all right, this doesn't look as awful as it did 2 months ago. But as of right now, I don't have like a lot of good things to say about the Bears, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they're going to be fighting for last place with the Lions.
Yeah, and that goes to the needs that I think they have. They have a need at wide receiver and corner, in my eyes.
I don't think wide receiver is that much of a need because, I mean, if Allen Robinson is there, you got your number 1, and then Darnell Mooney's really, really good too. So I think you already have your number 1 and number 2, and maybe you can get depth there. But I think at this point, if they're getting rid of their all-pro corner, you probably got to make a move at corner. And there will be good corners to be had at 20. So I could see them going corner in the first round, but that's not going to move the needle to being a contender in that division next year.
We'll see what happens. They were already a tough team last year.
Mm-hmm.
And
again, they upgraded their quarterback, and their defense is still going to be good, so we'll see. But I think the Vikings are going to take a step forward again this year. I think last year was a fluke, I think, due to the COVID year. I think that's what I want to transition to in now is the Vikings.
They played well down the stretch, too, the Vikings.
Right. They played well down the stretch, and I think due to COVID not getting the team together, that affected some teams. I think that affected all teams, some teams more than others, and I just think not being together. I think we all expected the Vikings to be a lot better last year, and they just weren't. So I expect them to bounce back from that this year, and then if they continue to upgrade their roster, Kirk Cousins is still a pretty good quarterback. If you really look at the stats and break down what he does as a quarterback, he's not bad. You could argue in a lot of metrics that he's a top 10 quarterback. Now, I mean, I would say borderline, but Kirk Cousins is a really good quarterback, and you can definitely get the job done with him. So if you have Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, I think adding a wide receiver 3 would be really key for the Vikings to free up Jefferson and Adam Thielen even more. And honestly, it's been suggested. I wouldn't hate it. It would hurt. But to see Larry Fitzgerald, I only see Larry going to a true contender, and I don't think the Vikings did that next year. I think they might compete for a playoff spot, and maybe they get in. But I don't view them as a Super Bowl winner. But it would be kind of cool to see Larry go back to Minnesota, his hometown, and play out one final year in front of fans for the team he used to be a ball boy for. I think that'd be a pretty cool story. But I only think he would leave the Cardinals to go to contender. But let's talk about their new addition in Patrick Peterson. Speaking of former Cardinals, they overpaid big time. So after watching Patrick Peterson this year, Patrick Peterson left the Cardinals mentally in 2018 after asking for a trade. He was never quite the same play after that. And then he had the PED suspension and called the Cardinals snakes in the grass for not paying him during his suspension. So that all happened, and then it was kind of from there that Cardinal fans lost their affinity, and then Patrick Peterson just kind of seemed to check out, and then from then we kind of all lost B2 that day. So now he's officially gone, signed a 10 million 1-year deal with the Vikings, and I think for the way he plays, he's not a guy who's going to tackle. He's not physical. Patrick Peterson used to be and still is. He's still a good player, but he used to be a really great, true All-Pro. But then I think he took on too much of his mentor, Deion Sanders, in terms of his play and personality. And it kind of hurt him late in his career. So maybe the fresh start is what he needs to, return to that All-Pro level. I believe he'll be 31 at the start of next season. So he's not super old, but he's gotten past the age now where corners do start to fade. And there was a report saying out there he's going to start playing safety, or that he would be okay with playing safety. But, you already got Harrison Smith out with the Vikings. So, I doubt he's going to be playing much safety. So I guess we'll see how it plays out. I'm not expecting a lot from Patrick Peterson at this point. He's a great Cardinal and all. But I was kind of ready for him to go. And he's not an incredible player anymore at this rate either. But I could see them adding a receiver from this point. Obviously, you still got Dalvin Cook. You got a good offensive line. Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback. You got one of the best two number one and number two wide receivers in the NFL. You got a pretty good defense. We'll see how Patrick Peterson comes into the fold there. I feel like the Vikings are locked for second place in this division. I feel like they're going to bounce back from the COVID year. They have a good roster. I think they're set up for success this upcoming season. What about you?
I like the Vikings. As for the Patrick Peterson signing, I like the signing personally. This coming from me who wasn't hot on Patrick Peterson, I think he just needs a change of scenery. Now, is he going to return to the All-Pro guy? No. But certainly, I think the Cardinals asked him to do a lot in the last couple of years. And for a guy who already was kind of checked out, I think they were still treating him like the lockdown corner, and that he no longer is. And I highly anticipate Mike Zimmer to do something different with him, whether it's give him some help on a double coverage with Harrison Smith, or maybe give him a little more zone than just man-to-man. I think this was the right place for Patrick Peterson to go for him to succeed. I think Mike Zimmer will do a fantastic job with him, and who knows, maybe we'll see a bit of a resurgence in Patrick Peterson's career because he'll have that kind of coach for him. This is not a disrespect to Vance Joseph either. I just don't think Patrick Peterson was an Arizona Cardinal anymore. As sad as that is to say, because Patrick Peterson gave some amazing Hall of Fame worthy years to the Cardinals. But at that point, I think he was checked out, and it wasn't the Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Peterson, and who's the other secondary guy?
Tony Jefferson, Rashad Johnson, Rob Howard.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
That was the no-fly zone.
Yeah, it wasn't that squad anymore, right? And I think once that was all gone, he was like, you know what, I'm out, I'm done. Which is kind of surprising because Buddha is really fucking good. Buddha Baker is beyond amazing. So I like the signing for the Vikings. At $10 million, when it could be more expensive for a corner, a 1-year $10 million rental ain't bad, I don't think.
I think it's not god awful. It's definitely an overpay. It's even more than he was getting paid last year. It's the most money I think I think his highest salary he's made in a single year, because I think he only made $9 last year. He's might have made more in a single year than that, but I figured he probably would have gotten like $6 million. I figured like the Cardinals were probably if he came back here, he was probably going to come back for like $5.5 million just because of our cap situation. But I felt like it was still a lot. I feel like for starting corner money, like because that's what he's going to be, I guess that's the market. But I feel like for a guy who's over the age of 30, coming off a PED extension a couple of years ago, a guy who hasn't been the same, I felt like it was a lot. That's just my opinion.
And if I remember, not all $10 million of that is guaranteed, right? Only like $6 million is guaranteed, if I remember. The rest is he has to play and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and if also, if I remember correctly, there wasn't a signing bonus. I didn't look too far into the contract, but I didn't see any mentions of a signing bonus with it. So all the money is like either guaranteed or earned, and that's it for the guy. I don't know. I didn't think it was a horrible contract when I saw it like at a glance, and I saw like some small details. I didn't go to the normal website NFL Sport Track and like look up the details and see what's the cap hit, what's this, blah 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 blah. Because I, be quite honest with you, I don't care. Whether that's a good sign of me as an amateur analyst or not. I don't care about every contract, sorry. There's only some contracts where I'm like, man, I really want to see what this contract does. Like Dak Prescott's. I think Dak Prescott's contract is fascinating for Dallas, and we'll get to that when we talk about the NFC East. I think it's a fantastic contract. But like Patrick Peterson, on like 1 year, I could really care less what the cap space hit is. I could really care what it is because it's just a rental. Like it doesn't have any long-term effects for the most part. So I like the 1 year signing. The only question to me is, if you get a 1 year signing, right, does that mean you as the Vikings are still like in on a Super Bowl run, right, with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, and Harrison Smith and the rest of your team? Like, are you saying, you know what, we just needed a corner, we're going to pay him $10 million, and this is how we beat Green Bay? Like, is that it? Is this what they thought was the magic formula?
It definitely won't be, but
because a 1 year signing usually when a team takes a 1 year deal with someone, right, it's for one of two reasons. You take a 1 year deal because you're interested in the player, but you don't want to take the long term gamble, so you sign them to a 1 year deal in hopes for a long term contract with them after, right? That doesn't appear likely with Patrick Peterson. I don't think that's likely. And if you do extend him, you extend him for like 2 years. So this isn't one of those situations, right? Or the other situation for 1 year deals is you sign a player to a 1 year deal because you're trying to make a Super Bowl run. Come join us for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
And because the Vikings are not, I do not believe they will sign Patrick Peterson long term. I don't think that's the case. If you were going to sign him long term, you would have already done it. 3 year deal, 2 year, 3 year deal. And he's not an injury-prone corner, right? So it's not like you gave him a 1 year deal to see if it would work out. And it's not like he's a bad corner like Xavier Rhodes was, so the Colts only gave him a 1 year, $5 million deal. That's not this situation. He's not a gamble. That's not why you gave him a 1 year deal. You give 1 year deals to gambles or Super Bowl runs. And so if this isn't
or if it's just like, I think another reason why is he's an aging player and he's kind of taking it year by year whether or not he wants to play. I mean, maybe he goes back to the Vikings next year at another 1 year deal and just keeps one-upping until he's done. Do I expect that? I mean, no, but I mean, it's a possibility.
It's possible. But I'm looking at this from an organizational perspective, not Patrick Peterson's perspective. What does this do for your team? I think it gives you solid secondary depth, right? But what does that do for your playoff/Super Bowl aspirations? Does it move the needle? And I'm not 100% sure if it does. Then again, I might be underestimating just how bad the secondary was last year because they were not that good last year. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery. It's one of those things where I guess we'll have to see it on the field to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I like the Vikings moving forward because I like what their roster has. I thought they really improved over in the last season. If we're looking at needs for the Vikings team, I would say going into the draft because I don't think they're going to spend much more money in free agency. I would argue that they 100% need to fix their left tackle, left guard side.
Mm-hmm.
I know they already have, I think it's Riley Reef as left tackle, but I know they have a left guard situation that they need to figure out. So there's that. Yannick Ngakoue did not last long on Minnesota's defensive line, and they still have problems at defensive line, so they still need to fix that. So probably something on the defensive line. I love Anthony Harris, and I love Harrison Smith, but if I remember, Anthony Harris isn't going to be on the team anymore, and Harrison Smith is, aging. He's not going to leave, but he is aging. I think you need to draft a replacement for him or a guy to be behind him. And as for tight end, because Kyle Rudolph left, do you think they need to draft a tight end?
I wouldn't be shocked if they did. I feel like that'd be an important target for Kirk Cousins outside of, Jefferson and Thielen. I think adding a tight end to the mix to be the number 3 would be ideal for the offense, because Kyle Rudolph wasn't really much of a threat the last couple of years.
Okay, so left guard, safety, and tight end are probably their biggest needs heading into the draft, and that's probably what we expect from them.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, let's get to the last team in the NFC North, which is the Lions. Okay, I don't have a ton to say about the Lions because we already talked about the Lions last time. They got a new head coach. They got Jared Goff as their quarterback. The Lions are in rebuild mode, if you ask me, and I think Jared Goff is playing for his job. So I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, the Lions need to do this, this, and this, and this, and then they're good. No, the Lions need to fix things across the board. They have pieces, right? But, for example, Marvin Jones left. Kenny Golladay is probably leaving. They have, oh my God, what's his name? The running back's name. Why am I missing out on his name right now?
DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift, thank you. They have DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson as like a duo. The Lions did sign Jamal Williams. So I guess they got a mixture of Jamal Williams, Kerryon Johnson, and DeAndre Swift. But DeAndre Swift is obviously the leader there. You need some wide receiver help. You traded away your corner to the Eagles. And then they drafted that rookie corner, didn't they? From last year, from Ohio State. I forget what his name is. Darius.
Jeff Okudah.
Yeah, that's who it was. You probably need more secondary help. They definitely need help on the defensive line. They've been trying to fix that through free agency the last couple of years, and it hasn't worked. They pretty much kind of had a hole there ever since Ndamukong Suh left, 6 years ago. They tried to fix it with Mike Daniels. That didn't work out. They tried to fix it with... it was a guy that they signed from the Ravens, but then he retired. So my biggest problem with the Lions is they have a roster they need to work on. It was Haloti Ngata. That's who it was. They need to... I need to give the Lions 2 to 3 years. They need to figure out their quarterback situation. They need to figure out what direction they want to take with Dan Campbell. And they need to figure out what their identity is. And the thing is, we have no idea what their identity is going to be with Dan Campbell. Yeah, we could say they're going to be this tough, gritty team, take out your kneecaps, blah, 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 right? That's fine. The moxie's fine. The attitude is fine. But that doesn't tell me your identity. Are you a run-first team? Are you a pass-first team? Are you a play defense and hope the offense scores enough team? Are you going to be a high-powered team and hope you have a bend-but-don't-break defense? Are you going to be this balanced attack of having the number 12 offense, number 12 defense, to where you're not really amazing at either, but you're good enough at both that you just win a ton of games and go 11-5? Who are you? And I don't know who this Lions team is, because I don't see any cornerstone pieces where I'm like, this is where you start your franchise off from. This is what the player you start off from. This is the guy you need to go off of. Right? DeAndre Swift is good, but I can't say he's the center core to that offense. The Lions are a massive question mark, and I think for at least a couple years, they will go from semi-relevancy to not very relevant for the next 2 years. And I think that's just because they traded away everyone, and they got a ton of draft picks for it, right? So they have the ammunition to rebuild, but that's where they are. They're in rebuild mode.
That's exactly what I was going to say too. That's where they are. They are in rebuild mode, and losing your 2 starting receivers and Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, your starting quarterback, who is one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. You have a very obvious downgrade at quarterback. I don't think he's going to be the long-term answer. I think the Lions are going to use one of those pieces of ammunition to draft a quarterback. Whether that's early in the draft, late in the draft, we'll find out. But probably a guy they're going to look to develop. I can imagine they're going to use some of the ammo with. But like you said, they do have the means and the assets to rebuild a team here, but they're not going to be competitive, especially in that division, for a couple more years. They're going to be a basement team. So hopefully that means the Cardinals won't have to play them again. Yay!
I guess you'll be happy about that one, unless you end up in 4th.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Oh boy! Wow, wait till that. No, I don't think it's gonna happen either. But don't count all your chickens yet. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say on the Lions, mostly because they're in full rebuild mode. I want to know more about them. They're like the biggest question mark in the NFL for me. Besides the Jaguars. The Jaguars and the Lions are the 2 biggest question marks for me because I have no idea what their identities are going to be. I could easily go off of Urban Meyer's past teams, but that's all college. What's he going to do in the NFL? I have no idea. Right? I have no idea what Urban Meyer's going to do in the NFL. I don't know what the Lions are going to do, and neither team has a lot of pieces to work with in the first place. So, yeah, Lions, big question mark for me. Do we want to move to the AFC West? Cool. I'm going to take the Chiefs first because I think the Chiefs are short. Look, they've gone to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. They could go to the Super Bowl again this year, quite honestly. Their biggest competition is what? Baltimore? Cleveland? Buffalo.
Could maybe throw Pittsburgh in there.
I'm not even going to throw Pittsburgh in there. I'm not even going to throw Tennessee in there. I'm not going to throw Indianapolis in there. I'm not saying those teams are bad either. I'm just saying who's competition for Kansas City and who do I see as Super Bowl contenders in the AFC? Yeah, probably Baltimore, Cleveland, Buffalo, and Kansas City. And I'm picking Kansas City out of all 4 of those teams again. Now this is just the offseason, obviously, but their losses were Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher, and they replaced it with Kyle Long. Did they really lose out in the end? Probably not. They're definitely going to be scheming a little bit better to try and make up for the fact that their offensive line got demolished. But it's very easy to see that could have been a one-off game, right? They had the worst game at the wrong time because we hadn't seen that kind of game happen against Kansas City before. We saw the whole 2 cover safety thing happen, but we didn't see their offensive line get demolished when we've seen them have problems with 2 cover safety, right? It was just a bad combination of, hey, not only are we going to play 2 cover safety because your offense can't run against it, first of all, because we saw Atlanta do it, and we saw, I believe it was Cleveland did it too, and they struggled against Cleveland doing it too, but they still won the Atlanta game and the Cleveland game, right? So it's not impossible for them to win those games. It's just you give Kansas City fits when you play 2 cover safety. But we hadn't seen a game where not only, hey, are we limiting your passing game, but we're also demolishing your offensive line so you can't run the ball either. We hadn't seen that, and it just so happened to be a perfect storm for the Buccaneers to wreck the Chiefs' offense. I don't think that's going to consistently happen. You're going to have the team that's going to be able to play 2 cover safety and destroy their offensive line, and I'm sure they'll game plan for those kind of things too moving forward. I trust Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy to be able to fix those issues. As for needs that they have, maybe draft another lineman, right? Because you lost 2 and you only got 1 back, right? Possibly draft another wide receiver because it's about that time where receivers are going to be leaving soon and you need to keep reloading. Maybe get some more secondary help, And you know what? Actually, no, not even secondary help. Forget that. Pass rush. Get a pass rusher. Like a pure pass rusher. Not just a guy who dominates the line like they have in Frank Clark. No, a pure pass rusher. So yeah, offensive line, pure pass rusher. I would say that's their biggest needs. And this is kind of what I was talking to you about before, right? These are moves that where like it moves the needle because you already have a Super Bowl contending roster. You fix those two things and bam, you got a perfect team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kansas City doesn't have like a ton of holes. Like they don't have like a lot of elite talent everywhere. It's just everybody's above average. They're not elite, but like Tyrann Mathieu, I wouldn't call him elite, but he's certainly an above average safety, right? I wouldn't call. I mean, I guess yeah, Tyreek Hill could be somewhere in the elite category, but like Sammy Watkins and Demarcus Robinson are nowhere near wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 elites, but they're above average in what they do in the offense, so it works. I would say probably the elite talents they have are Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and that's it. Yeah, they just have a lot of above average talent, and that's what makes this team so good. And you just need to keep compiling onto that, and make up for your holes where they are. I would say pure pass rusher and left guard, right guard, maybe a center. Center probably seems most logical for them since I know they had a couple screw-ups from their center in the postseason. So probably center. Unless Kyle Long is going to play center, which I don't think he will. No, he won't. He's a guard.
He won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a guard. So
I don't think there's a whole lot to be said on the Chiefs. I think you kind of put it together. I think they will be looking to add another receiver because, like you said, they need to reload. And I think there's a lot of talent in this draft there. Kind of like you said, or the way I view it is last year they drafted a running. They're going to be drafting late again. They're drafting 31st. They took a running back with the final pick of the draft, which is like a good value for the 32nd overall pick. So with that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if they take a receiver there or another skill position player there, just because that would be a good value pick. But pass rusher would be something I'd be interested in there too. But there's not a lot of pure pass rushers that are very great prospects in this draft. With that being said, I think the Chiefs are fine. They're set. They're going to win that division. They're going to be a contender in the AFC. There's not a whole lot they need to do. I think in the Super Bowl, they were caught on a bad day against a very, very good pass rush and schemed defense with really, really great players on a day where they were missing both of their tackles and it doomed them. So I think that's what happened to the Chiefs. There's nothing wrong with them.
Alrighty, cool. Let's move on to the Chargers because I have like two quick things that like I want to say on them, and then if you have anything else you can say about them. The Chargers are with the rookie quarterback, and they're not in rebuilding mode, but they're certainly going to take some time to get where they need to go. First things first, and this may sound controversial, I think they need to draft a wide receiver because you got Keenan Allen. Mike Williams is going to be on his fifth-year option, but who really knows if Mike Williams is going to stick around or not? And I know you got, like, KJ Hill.
He's good for, like, a couple explosive catches a game, but he's not, like, an elite number 2.
Yeah, and you got, like, KJ Hill and Tyron Johnson, but honestly, I would like it if, like, let's say day 2 of the draft, so, like, second, third round, they drafted, like, Rashad Bateman or Kadarius Toney, possibly. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You wouldn't mind that, would you?
No, I think that would be a good move for them. I think getting your young quarterback another weapon is always really smart. They just got him a veteran center, which I think is a really big deal. It's not only going to help Justin Herbert, in his development, because they added Corey Linsley, and he's not just a veteran center. I should have, he's the best center in the National Football League.
He's an all-pro.
He's got a lot of experience, and he's probably the best at his position in the NFL. Him and Rodney Hudson are right up there. But I'd give Lindsley the edge. I think him matched with a young quarterback in Herbert is going to be a big deal. It's going to help their running game. It's going to help and improve their offensive line massively. The center is the quarterback of the offensive line. The center calls all the checks, makes all the audibles and adjustments. So I think that's really important. And then I think giving Herbert another weapon would be really big. And then defensively, you just got to hope you stay healthy because they have the pieces. It's just going to depend on if they stay healthy. Derwin James is one of the most elite playmaking defenders in the league, but we haven't seen him play for 2 years. So who knows what he's going to be? He should be in good shape. So I guess we're going to find out, but we'll see if he's the same player he once was. Because, 2 years out of the game, that's a pretty big deal. And then from there, I think the Chargers have a good roster. I think we'll see what I feel. I don't know what to say of this new head coach. I don't really know a lot about him, so we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. We'll see if it was a good hire or not, if it was a good fit. But I think it's kind of a wait and see approach with the Chargers. But they have the pieces.
One last thing I want to say, I think they need to get a pass rusher opposite of Joey Bosa. Now, your first reaction might be, well, what about Melvin Ingram? Well, they didn't discuss any contract extensions with Melvin Ingram going into his final year, and then he was put on season-ending IR and had 0 sacks for the year because of his knee injury. So basically, the Chargers are Eric Weddling him, except Eric Weddle had a much better final season, but they didn't even talk extension with Eric Weddle. They didn't want to pay him. For whatever reason, they don't like paying defensive players. I don't get it. So I anticipate Melvin Ingram is going to be on another team, which means you need a pass rusher. You need a pass rusher opposite Joey Bosa. So I would say in the draft, you should draft a pass rusher as well.
Well, that's all I got on the Chargers. But yeah, I can agree with you on the pass rusher point.
Alrighty, cool. Do you want to go with the Raiders, or do you want to do the Broncos next? Do you want to save the Raiders for last?
We can do the Raiders now.
Okay.
So with the Raiders, do we know what they're doing? Like, do they have a vision? Do they have a plan?
Like last year, I was really looking forward to them. I really liked what they were doing. Unfortunately, they lost that game to Miami with a miracle throw by Ryan Fitzpatrick.
So my question is, how many years have we been under Gruden now?
3.
So it's been 3 years under Gruden. Do we have a vision at this point?
I thought we did last year.
What is Gruden trying to build? I thought we did last year too, and then it was this exact same result, and now you're adding players that don't really seem to fit or you have no real need for. You're letting your all-pro offensive lineman, center Rodney Hudson, go, and it's not like he had a huge cap hit.
I can't help but wonder if the combination of building the most expensive stadium we've ever seen and COVID wrecked their financials, and now they can't afford to pay their highest paid center in the league, and they can't afford to pay these players.
I wouldn't be surprised that was part of it, but with that being said, you still there doesn't seem to be a true clear vision with this team, and I think that's concerning going forward. If you don't have a true vision, what are we doing here? This Kenyon Drake deal makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Now, the deal itself for what you're getting out of him wasn't bad. So Kenyon Drake, I believe, has now proved it after he bitched and bitched and bitched about never getting a chance to be a true number one running back. Well, you got your chance last year, and you averaged 3.9 yards a carry, and you didn't even cross the 1,000-yard mark. So what Kenyon Drake is a great change of pace back. He is built to be a number 2 back. Even in the games that he played with the Cardinals in 2019 where he was fantastic, only 3 or 4 of those games were actually great. It was a 3 or 4 game sample size that we paid $9 million after that. And I was fine with it at the time, but then it was apparent that Kenyon Drake wasn't that guy, which is fine. So to already have Josh Jacobs in place there, him being your lead horse on a rookie contract, why go out of your way to pay a guy $7 million a year for the next 2 years, to be a backup to him or be the number 2 change of pace guy to him? It just doesn't really seem to make sense to me. And who are they running behind now? You just got rid of one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. It doesn't make sense. The only other real offensive weapon that really terrifies you on that team is Darren Waller, and he's their tight end. Hunter Renfro's a good receiver, but he's not gonna light the world on fire. I think he's just a good, scrappy young receiver. Other than that, I mean, there's no real defensive pieces on this team that wow you. There's nothing on this team that wows you. They're a good, gritty team. I think John Gruden is a good football coach, but I don't think he can build a good football team. And I'm beginning to question if Mike Mayock is in over his head as well.
I mean, we questioned that 3 years ago when it happened.
Right.
But we all know that the Mike Mayock signing was Mike Mayock was just going to be like, oh God, I hope he doesn't hear me say this because I would be put on blast for it. But I'm saying this is just like a low level person. He is the highest paid scout in the NFL, is what Mike Mayock is, right? He helps. He's very good at talent evaluating, which is why he was always the draft guy. Mike Mayock was always one of the best non-football guys to judge football, which is why he was a perfect marriage for John Gruden, because John Gruden doesn't want the GM to tell him what to do. Right? John Gruden wants to build the roster in his own vision, and then just have some guy say, okay, this is what I think of this player, what do you think? Right? And Mike Mayock and him probably get along really well doing that. It's probably a great chemistry thing. Problem is, I don't think John Gruden is good at roster building. He traded away Trent Brown, a tackle. He traded away Ronnie Hudson, a center. And then he traded away Gabe Johnson, a guard. When the best part of your offense was the running game. So you decimate it and then sign Kenyon Drake? Hello?
Yeah. Absolutely no fucking vision. Makes no sense.
No sense, whatever. And like you were saying, their biggest problem has been defense. Go get some defense. They haven't done that. How does this help Derek Carr? How does this help Josh Jacobs? What does this do for anything? It makes no sense. And maybe in 5 months we'll look like a bunch of clowns when the Raiders are 5-0. Maybe. I doubt it. But as of right now, does John Gruden know what he's doing? I don't think so, honestly. I think getting rid of these players makes zero sense. I don't know if he's forced to be making rid of... I don't know if he's being forced to get rid of these players or if he's getting rid of them on his own. I like John Gruden as a coach, and I like the energy he has put into the Raiders organization. I think he's been a fantastic addition in that way. I've loved the line bits from him. I like the energy I see on the sideline, and I liked what I've seen from him when this team plays in big moments. Even though it's not always successful. But I like what I see from this Raiders team. They're fun to watch again. They did beat the Chiefs this year, too. But you can't tear down your offensive identity after establishing it. Because to me, when I was looking at this, I'm like, all right, he wants to do the old classic ground and pound, launch it deep. Right? That's what they looked like they were doing. I'm like, okay, I like that offensive identity. It was really good this year. All right, you just need to get a defense in the offseason, and I'm going to really believe in the Raiders in 2021. And, the opposite happened. So I'm really down on Las Vegas currently. I don't know how you can get excited about this team.
Yeah, I bought into them 2 years in a row just to be disappointed, so I'm not really down with them.
Like I said, I like what I saw last year. It wasn't perfect, but I liked what I saw. I saw improvement moving forward. But this isn't improvement. This is walking backwards. I don't get it, so. All right, speaking of, status quo and, moving backwards and whatnot, let's talk about Denver here. So nothing Denver has done has, thrilled me. But also, I'm wondering if they don't have to because Denver is so young. Like, there's not many old players on this team. Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton are all really young guys on offense. Like, there's potential for this offense to stick around, or at least most of this offense to stick around for quite a while. Melvin Gordon's on the team. I think they need another running back after it was confirmed that Philip Lindsay's not sticking around, which I think is a mistake. I think they should keep Philip Lindsay. I think it's a mistake to let him go. But they're letting him go. So you need another running back. They've always had problems specifically on the right side of the offensive line. So they probably need a right tackle or right guard. And you need to replace A.J. Bouye at corner for Denver. So they have some holes and they have some issues to fix. And this is also going to be the first year that John Elway's not the GM. I think he's like head of football operations now, but he's no longer the GM. So we'll have to see what the new GM does and how he envisions like the team is going to happen. I think offensively, you can improve at quarterback. I was not impressed with Drew Luck last year. However, if they're making the call to have him do a full offseason with all these weapons and actually have a year where Cortland Sutton doesn't have an ACL tear and Jerry Jeudy is healthy, you know what? I say go for it. See what you actually wanted to see, because they didn't get to see what their vision was last year because of injuries. So if you want to give him that shot, let's see it. Let's see what happens. I'm all for it. We'll give him a second year to start, and if he ain't it, he ain't it. Cut bait, move on. The only way I would say don't stick with Drew Lock is if Deshaun Watson was available to you. Like, if you can go grab Deshaun Watson, fucking go do it. I think Deshaun Watson with this offense would be the most amazing thing we've seen in a long time. Like, Deshaun Watson with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, and Melvin Gordon. Hell yeah, I'm so down for that. But unless that happens, there's not really much they can do at quarterback at the moment. Do they need to think about life post Von Miller? And I'm not talking about his lawsuits and like law allegations, because those charges have been dropped. I'm talking, do they need to start thinking about life post Von Miller in general? What do you think?
I think they are. It's not like Von Miller's been the all-pro pass rusher he once was. He's still a good player, but he's not. It's not going to be the end of the world if they let him go, especially if Bradley Chubb can come in and fill that role a bit. It's not going to be quite to the all-pro level, I don't think, but he's a good player. And then I think as a whole, this roster, it's a couple pieces away, but I think no more being quarterback. I know you kind of like Drew Lock. You kind of want to do the wait-and-see approach, but this is a what have you done for me lately league, and the only time we ever saw Drew Lock ever have success was that 5 or 6 game stretch his rookie year. I'm not sold on that. And then last year, he put garbage on the field all year. Because let's be honest, he was not good last year. He was pretty bad last year.
No, he was not good last year.
Now maybe it's year 3. He takes a jump with the talent around him, and they're a good football team. But you're still not better than the Chargers, in my opinion, with Drew Lock. I think the Chargers have a better. I think maybe overall the roster for the Broncos might be a little bit better than the Chargers. I think they're very, very close. I think their talent overall and their roster is really, really good. I just think the quarterback situation for the Broncos is that porous with Drew Lock that I think they're a quarterback away from being number 2 in this division. I think they're a quarterback away from being a contender for the playoffs. I don't think they will be able to compete with the Chiefs because they still have other holes. But I think if they were to get a legitimate upgrade at quarterback, whether it be via the draft, even though I know they're kind of in a draft spot that doesn't quite lean to you getting one of the elite ones. But, I mean, if you were to trade for Deshaun Watson, I don't think Seattle's letting Russell Wilson go at this point. But if they were to get Russell Wilson, I mean, I'd love for them to take him out of the NFC entirely, let alone the NFC West, but I don't think it'll happen. But if you were able to get a legitimate upgrade at quarterback, this Broncos team, I think, is set to compete. But, I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be Drew Lock there next year. So I think obviously you got to get a guy to replace AJ Bouye, and probably an RB2, and then upgrading the offensive line is something they're going to look to do, kind of like what you were saying. But I think the roster's there. It's just Drew Lock's not good, man. He's not good. I don't think he's going to be an NFL quarterback for much longer.
So there's one other issue I have with Denver, and I started noticing this in like their last 5 to 6 games. I'm not so sure how much I like the Vic Fangio fit. There were just some weird calls that he made about not calling timeouts when timeouts should have been made, or calling a timeout when like you should have let the clock run. And I was like, this is some real like early Andy Reid vibes feel right now. Like, this clock management's bad, real bad. And some of the play calling he would make in like the final 2 minutes of a game, he'd like hand it off to Melvin Gordon when he's down by 5. I'm like, what are you doing? You have one timeout and you're handing it to Melvin Gordon. That's like, I like Melvin Gordon, but he's not that kind of back. He's not guaranteed to give you 5 to 10 yards in the last 2 minutes. This isn't Marshawn Lynch. This isn't Marshawn Lynch. This isn't Marshawn Lynch in 2012, you know. And you don't need to say this is how little he thinks of Drew Lock. It doesn't matter how bad your quarterback is, you're throwing it in that position.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I'm not saying it's right, but maybe that's why he just doesn't have faith in his quarterback.
I think it has to.
Want to know what I would like? Want to know what I would like? I'd like to see the Broncos trade for Gardner Minshew.
Ew.
You probably don't have to. You probably don't have to trade a lot, and that's a massive upgrade.
See, I like Gardner Minshew.
To me,
I like Gardner Minshew, but I don't like that. Mostly because I don't think Gardner Minshew's style fits with Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is very much an old-fashioned coach, and he loves defense and running the ball first. And I think that's why I didn't like a lot of his calls, because there was a lot of times when his old-fashioned philosophy, which, don't get me wrong, as a Ravens fan, I love that philosophy of run the ball, play defense. Like, that's my kind of thing. But when you're in the final 2 minutes, you don't run the ball. Like, it's very frustrating to watch as a Ravens fan where we're in the final 2 minutes and we can't run the ball, right? Because we can't. It's not an option. It's our best thing, and we can't do it because that's the wrong thing to do in that situation. You are wasting time. You are killing the clock when you are not allowed to kill the clock. And when he would make those decisions, I was like, what are you doing, dude? You can't do that. Like, if Lamar Jackson is your quarterback, right, which, to be fair, outside of a couple games, it's really hard to say Lamar Jackson's going to win the game in the final 2 minutes on purely just passing. Right now, Lamar Jackson can run, and that's a different story. Drew Lock can't do that. So Lamar Jackson can pull something out of his ass, something that Drew Lock can't do. But regardless, even like a run-first team like Baltimore knows, okay, we have to throw. Like, there's no option, right? So why can't Vic Fangio do the same thing? I think he has a lot of problems. What's it called? Situational football is a problem for him. And usually the coaches that are best at situational football are the ones who win games. So, I'm not sure about the Vic Fangio fit either. We'll see what happens this year. They're going to give it a go. They're going to say, hey, this is what we built it for. We didn't get to see it last year. We had a lot of players get hurt. Like, Von Miller got his ACL tear. Cortland Sutton got his ACL tear. Jerry Jeudy got hurt. And I think Noah Fant was out for 4 or 5 games. Like, none of what their vision was supposed to be happened last year. So they're giving it a shot this coming year. We'll see what happens. I like the potential of the Broncos, but I can't say I like what they are, if that makes sense. Like, I love their potential, and I see where it could go. But I'm also, like, not 100% on board, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I feel about Denver overall. Get yourself a new corner. Get yourself a backup running back to Melvin Gordon. Get some help on the right guard side, or just right line side in general. And maybe think about your future post Von Miller. Those are my Those are my takeaways. You got anything else on the AFC West? I think it's just Kansas City's to hold unless we get surprised by someone, right?
Yeah, it's not really going to matter.
Do you think there's a team who could surprise them? I feel like the team who's going to finish fourth is Oakland at this point.
I wouldn't be no. It's going to still be the Broncos, dude. I think you give Drew Lock too much credit.
I think I like the Denver Broncos. No, it's not even Drew Lock. I think I like the roster more than I like the Raiders roster.
Maybe, but I still think John Gruden's good enough of a coach to still have the Raiders start hot enough again and then just fall off. That's what I see the Raiders as. They're just going to be a team that falls off every year. They're probably going to win 8 games, and I can't confidently say I see the Broncos doing that.
So they're going to go 8-9, is what you're saying?
Probably.
Alrighty then. Well,
but yeah, I got nothing else.
Yeah, I think that's it for us. So we covered both the AFC West and the NFC North in an hour and 20 minutes. Not bad. So I don't have much else to say on these teams. Of course, we're going to have a lot of different things to probably mention about them post-draft, but that doesn't happen for another month and a half. So it's going to be a while till we get there. It'll be exciting when we get there. I've started to put more research into the draft. Unfortunately, even though I don't like the draft that much, it is my job to try and at least know what I'm talking about. Watch some of these college highlight tapes, see what these players can do, and see what their weaknesses are, see what their strengths are, and make some picks from there. Will I be a guy who could tell you, drafts 1 through 7? Not at all. But I could tell you rounds 1, 2, and 3, maybe. Right? That's what I'm going to try to do this year. So I won't be a deep cut guy for the draft, but I'll definitely improve what I have been. Pardue over here is our big draft guy. He loves that stuff, so he's going to be our big guy moving forward in April.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Alrighty. So I think we're it. We moving out?
Yeah, I think I'm all good. I'm ready to go make myself something to eat.
Alright, so you can follow him at HC_Pardue. You can follow me at HCJC Sanders. And you can follow the show at HC Analyst. I think outside of that, we got no other following. So hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button on Twitter. We appreciate the interactions we've gotten in the last couple weeks. Thank you so much. We've really appreciated people that have been commenting on our account, commenting on my account and Pardue's account. We love your interactions. We love seeing it. Appreciate that. It's been a year. We're finally seeing some things we want to see from the show, and that's a lot of fun. We're getting some really fun guests that we've had. Having Catherine on was awesome. We're going to have another 2 local Arizona guests. It's always going to be Arizona people because that's where we live. We're having another 2 Arizona guests on next week. We're excited for that. We'll be discussing the NFC West. So thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.